Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I have a very esteemed panel with me today to talk about cross-border data flows, powering the future of trade with open finance. To my left, I have Hakan Egalu, who is an advisor at the BIS Innovation Hub in Hong Kong. Next to Hakan, we have Jane Moore, who is Head of Department for Payment and Innovations at the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK. And to Jane's left, we have Louise Taylor-Digby, who is the Global Head of ESG Values. Sorry, I can't read that now. And Vice Chair of the ICC Chamber of Commerce. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today. I'm Nilix Davlukia. I'm your moderator for this session today. So we're talking about data, access to data. We know that in many jurisdictions across the globe, there's been the implementation of open banking. Countries are looking at open finance and how they can use the access to data to power their economies. So today we're going to go that one step further, and we're going to talk about cross-border data flows. Hakan, let me come to you first, because the BIS has very recently launched Project Aperta. So please tell us what it's about, what it's looking to do.
Thank you, Nelixa. First of all, thank you for having me here to talk about cross-border data portability and open finance. So the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, we have the Innovation Hub in 7 different locations. So what we do is we work with the central banking community to use novel technologies and ideas to apply it for the financial system, to strengthen it and come up with public good infrastructure that can be used by everyone. So with Project Aperta, we wanted to tackle open finance. So what is the answer from central banks, from international organizations to improve open finance functioning in the world? So we came up with the idea of making open finance interoperable cross-border, so that data portability, the exchange of data, can be possible. So as you know, and hopefully know, open finance is being regulated, or in some different form, if around 70 countries, jurisdictions worldwide. Open finance is widely implemented in a domestic way, so it functions domestically to allow third-party providers to access data through APIs. But what if we could enable the connectivity between these different ecosystems cross-border through technology to make data portability possible? So we launched the project in October, so last month, out of our Hong Kong center. So as I said, we have 7 centers. One of that, and 2 of the 7 are in Asia, and in Hong Kong and Singapore. So we are partnering together with central banks and international organizations to come up with that piece of technology and the interoperability layer to make it happen. Together with the Central Bank of the UAE, the Central Bank of Brazil, the UK is also involved with the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, and the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. So these are the 4 jurisdictions that aim to connect their ecosystems. Together with GLIVE, the ICC, DSI, the Digital Standards Initiative, and the Hong Kong University are partnering with us to come up with that solution. And the solution will have 3 main components. I don't want to detail it down, but the 3 ones are to the harmonization space. So how do we make sure that the different APIs can be translated amongst each other, that data can flow smoothly? The second one is the data piece, to make sure that we have a safe and secure environment, that data can be transferred from A to B with an end-to-end encryption. So that's something that is very important to us as well. The data will not be stored on the platform. It will be a way that we want to enable that the data can be actually channeled through from A to B, from sender to receiver. And the third one is on trust. So how can we enable cross-border trust? The domestic open banking, open finance ecosystems, they work, again, domestically. So a third-party provider can trust a bank can trust another bank through an infrastructure that is called a trust framework. So how do we make it possible technically that a trust framework in one jurisdiction can communicate with another one, and they're mutually function, and they're mutually recognizing their licenses, for example. So these are the likes of things that we're looking into in Project Aperta, and we are very excited to have launched the project and working with the wider community on it.
Thank you very much. I can see that you're covering a number of jurisdictions across the globe, so a real showcasing the art of the possible, given the countries that you're trying to connect. Jane, let me come to you. Hakan has mentioned that the FCA is participating in Project Aperta. Obviously, cross-border trade is essential. It's crucial for all jurisdictions. What benefits does the FCA see as coming from the possibility of the portability of data across borders, but also what do you think are the challenges you face?
Thanks, Melissa, and thank you for inviting me here. It's lovely to see so many faces in the audience. Open finance is one of the key things that we're looking at, and as Hakan said, there needs to be interoperability across the world. We need to be able to share data. So we're very excited to be part of the Project Aperta, which Hakan said is international collaboration on smart data and open finance interoperability, aimed at reducing frictions and costs in global finance. And there's lots of exciting use cases that can come from that. And I'm looking at this from the regulator's perspective. What benefits can that bring to us? So it can bring lots. If you have interoperability, collaboration to get standards, functionalities to work across the world, then the global financial markets can grow. There's no longer some of the challenges around cross-border issues, and having cross-border data flowing will help regulators regulate. It will help firms grow. There will be greater transparency and development in global financial markets. This will foster innovation, which is one of the key things that we want to do. One of the key things here is to walk around and see the innovations happening and make sure that the regulations can work for it. So interoperability, as I say, is one of the key things in the global landscape. But there are challenges. We need to make sure that regulatory frameworks work, legislation works, and then we need to make sure from a technical perspective that everything can talk to each other. So APIs need to speak the same language. It's all very well developing one in one country and another in another country. If they don't speak the same language, then they won't work and we won't get the benefits from it. The trust frameworks, we need to be able to join trust frameworks across the world so that they can talk to each other again, so that if we have similar standards in one, we can ensure that we have similar standards in another. And then lastly, it's just the challenge of the data exchange itself. So what needs to happen, what standards need to come into place, what technology needs to change, and again, what regulation needs to be provided so that there is a safe environment for it to flow across the world.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Jane. So, Louise, at SWIFT and the ICC, you've been at the forefront of the call to digitize trade, because Aperta is not just about the connectivity, about the cross-border data flow, but it's really wanting to show how this connectivity can make a big difference for trade. Hakan has outlined the project. Jane has given us some of the pros and cons of how this could look and what it means. But global e-commerce is not just about this aspect of sharing data. What other challenges or even benefits do you see ahead as this evolves?
Thank you. As you articulated, SWIFT has been involved in trying to help facilitate frictionless trade and the associated payments for over 5 decades in a non-profit capacity. We do that across over 200 countries and territories, currency, asset and technology agnostic. And there have been a number of attempts to support the digitization of trade, not only via the SWIFT community, but also through the International Chamber of Commerce. I think, to pick up on some of the other barriers, I think the legislative challenges are fairly significant. And there we've seen some fantastic progress from the United Nations Commission for International Trade Law with the model law for electronic transferable records. Because very practically speaking, some of the documentation in global trade constitutes legal title. And some of the laws associated with that date back many years, and they've not necessarily kept pace with technological developments. So at SWIFT, we were delighted to give a platform to the UN to talk about the role of Melita, as it's fondly known, in really helping to accelerate trade digitization through harmonized legislative reform. Other challenges that we see are the fragmentation of standards, not just data standards, standards around identity protocols, standards around security protocols, and we're delighted to see some fantastic work coming through from the ICC Digital Standards Initiative there to try and address that. And then I think, very practically, there are a myriad of actors, rules, regulations, and incentives in global commerce. We're talking about something that cuts across both physical and financial supply chains. So we need a movement. We need a movement against fragmentation, and we need a movement to bring all of these different parts of physical and financial supply chains together to really move the needle on digitization.
Thank you, Louise. So it seems that Aperta could provide a key building block, though, in helping this journey. Jane, I'm going to come to you because you've mentioned about international collaboration in Project Aperta, and regulators are going to come together to identify interoperable standards and a way forward. But of course, Hakan's mentioned it, I've mentioned it, open banking, open finance is currently a very domestic proposition. Even in the EU, where they have harmonised legislation, it's still a fairly domestic proposition. So just tell us, how is the UK leveraging the benefits of the open data, open finance economy? What is the sort of go-forward plan?
So yes, there's lots of benefits from it. We are looking at open banking. We've been developing open banking within the UK for the last about 8 years now. And we're looking to build on the success that we've had on open banking for open finance. So open banking within the UK has got open banking payments, it's got open banking data, and we're looking to really exploit how open banking data can be used, and we're doing a lot of work around that within the FCA and the other regulators in the UK. One thing that we need, though, to really fully explore the benefits of open finance's legislation, the UK government has very recently, I think it was a couple of weeks back, introduced the Data Use and Access Bill. It has a very snappy title, into our Parliament, and that will set the scenes for open finance for us, for a smart data economy to be developed within the UK. That has the mechanisms to set up interface bodies, which will be central bodies within the ecosystem to promote centralised standards. So to summarise, really, in the UK, we're building on how we've built open banking and looking at how we can expand in a efficient and pragmatic way to open finance so that we can share data really effectively and we can get the benefits for everybody of a true data economy.
Thank you. And we touched upon the UK because although there are many jurisdictions in the room and there have been different approaches, a core fundamental has been that the globe has often looked to the UK to see how they've implemented open banking, taken the benefits, improved on them, and we can see those improvements across different jurisdictions. And so it is a virtuous circle that you have this collaboration as we move forward. Louise, coming back to you. For you, what sets Aperta apart from the many digital trade initiatives that you've been involved in that have taken place, and how do you think it fits into the jigsaw?
Thank you. So I think, what's very appealing about Aperta is the fact that it's built on principles of interoperability. Over the last decade, we've seen an array of different walled gardens trying to advance and accelerate the digitization of global trade. But when we talk to SMEs and when we talk to corporates, that doesn't actually move things forward for them. You know, the need to connect with multiple different platforms and ecosystems, the need to deal with multiple different standards, identity and security protocols and commercials. So I think Agora being driven through the lens of public good and collaborating with organisations like the International Chamber of Commerce, who also represent public good, with interoperability at the heart rather than driving another walled garden. I think that's a real differentiating factor. I think what also sets Aperta apart as well is the willingness to leverage the assets and capabilities that this ecosystem has already developed. So there is already some wonderful work that's been done, whether it's through the CPMI and APEX work on APIs or the ICC and SWIFT's work on trade standards. Aperta's willingness to come to the table and foster interoperability and collaboration and look at how we leverage what's already out there and then build on that to accelerate. I think that removing the friction and driving for that collaborative approach is really promising.
Thanks very much, Louise. So Louise has articulated very well the benefits that can be driven by Aperta, and is going to be supporting data portability in general. There are currently 2 use cases, Hakan, for the prototype. Can it scale?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I agree with what Louise was saying, also Jane, and especially that, the idea of Aperta, and I come to the use cases then, is to use existing infrastructure, existing concepts that are there, and make sure that they can interoperate for the purpose of reducing friction in global finance. So 2 areas or use cases that we have identified, and it's not limited to these two use cases, but it's for the prototype to show that it is possible and there are use cases that can actually run on that solution. So the first one is a quite simple one, is to improve data portability of KYC information and account history, to ensure that a bank opening process can be fastened up, right? So it's not the actual bank opening, that's not what we provide, but we provide the infrastructure to transfer the data in a harmonized way from a bank in one jurisdiction to a bank in another jurisdiction that are not necessarily in the same banking group, right? They are different. So how do we achieve that? It doesn't sound very kind of super innovative as such, to bring data from A to B, but I think to get there, to develop harmonized ways, some form of protocols, and a trusted environment where data can be transferred, and that the other side believes that these data are correct and come from a licensed institution. So that's on the first one, is to open a bank account. How do we get data from A to B that is necessary for that? The second one is the classic use case in shipping, in logistics, in trade. So, goods that are shipped from A to B, how can data such as e-bill of lading or letter of credit when it's issued by the bank, how can that be transferred in a harmonized way between A and B using open finance infrastructure? So that's also part of the novelty, so to say, to use that what is not meant for it at the beginning, to use it for something that is maybe in an area where it is useful, which many markets haven't looked at. And as Louise said, there are standards, there are protocols and everything in place that we don't need to recreate. So we are using that what is there. We are using open finance, open banking APIs to play around and see how can these 2 worlds play together to create more benefits for global finance. And another thing that we want to explore is, of course, also the payment initiation part. So how can open banking, open finance payment initiation can be leveraged as well? For example, to have an end-to-end smooth journey for an SME, to initiate a payment, for example, to pay an invoice or so. So that's also part of the exploration in our project. It's the interoperability layer, the protocols, the ways of working, some form of an approach that we want to develop that will be public good, so that we want to trigger the discussion and also this movement to have more organizations, private sector organizations as well, to develop solutions for that. So Aperta will not be that one solution that will do that for everyone, but it is a prototype to show it's possible. It is about global collaboration between central banks, between international organizations. It is actually possible. You just need to get these jurisdictions together to say, okay, it is possible technically. Let's make it happen also from a regulatory side and all of this, which is, by the way, not our mandate as Innovation Hub. We just look at the tech and to make it feasible, but then the rest needs to come as well. And that's why we believe that through technology, we can actually trigger and motivate and stimulate the discussions between the jurisdictions to come up with mechanisms that allow data portability at a larger scale.
So I think it's important just to remind the audience that you're not asking to build anything new. It's about interoperability between what is there. So, that I'm sure is a benefit to industry, and people who will want to participate will come to that shortly. I am conscious of time, so I'm going to come to each of you with a final sort of question for thought, but short answers, please, ladies and gentlemen. So, Louise, you've sat here, you've articulated the benefits, the challenges. Aperta is about data portability, but we're talking about trade. And you mentioned it, SMEs. This could be valuable for SMEs who face so many challenges in being able to understand what other jurisdictions need for cross-border trade. So if you had one wish, it's nearly Christmas, what's on your wish list?
Thank you. I cheekily have about 4, but I'll be quick. So I think number 1 is legal harmonisation. We're sat in Singapore. Singapore has adopted the United Nations model law, so has the United Kingdom. So I think that legal harmonisation will take away some of that hesitancy. Standards, not standards for standards' sake, but the richer data will allow us to unblock the challenges around KYC, around credit risk, around understanding supply chains and the sustainability ramifications. So we need to look beyond the technical standard to the actual business benefit. And interoperability, there's a real need for collaboration. And I just wrap up by saying that we need to lean into corporates and SMEs more, because whatever we do here in the Fintech Festival or anywhere else, it needs to be practical and feasible and value-adding to them.
Thank you. I would say that legal harmonisation is on a par with world peace, Louise, but it's good that you're dreaming big. So, Jane.
The UK have done it.
How do you think that this Open Finance initiative can actually move the dial for better global e-commerce?
So this is rather like a Christmas wish list. I'm getting out my crystal ball. I don't know what it's going to show. I don't know how it's going to move the dial. And I think it's on all of us as regulators to create the environment to allow industry to move that dial. And so I'm just really excited about how the interoperability can work, what initiatives can come out, and how that can really make a difference.
Absolutely. So it's that role of regulators and jurisdictions to have that sort of catalyst benefit. And Hakan, for the benefit of our audience, hopefully they're as excited about this as all of us on the panel. So if they're a regulator, if they're an industry participant, how do they get involved in Project Aperta?
So there is the option of becoming an observing member. So those who are not project participants, who are active members of the project, these are those that are mentioned at the beginning. But there's also an option of reaching out to discuss whether you're interested to be observing member, which is more like we are inviting observing members on a regular basis to give updates on the project, to see where it goes, and you can ask questions. You can also come to our booth. We have a BIS Innovation Hub booth here, I think quite close in this area. You can just come and then ask your questions about all of our projects. So not only Aperta, but we have also plenty of other exciting projects. So feel free to come. and looking forward for discussion.
You should have told them there's also nuts on the booth if you come. There's a bribe there if anybody wants to go and visit the BIS booth. Ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you've heard some really good insights into the art of the possible for a project aperta. Please, in the usual way, could you thank my panelists, and thank you for your time today.